Welcome to our 2015 Community Communication Meeting. I'm Dave Barkemeyer, Milam County Judge, and I'd like to spend a few minutes acquainting you with our budget plan for 2016. But before I do that, I'd like to review our performance in 2015 so far this year to show you how we're doing and to give you some background for why we're doing what we're doing in our plans for next year. Costs are well under control so far this year, running about 9% under budget, with revenues ahead of budget as well. We're 100% collected on our ad valorem taxes as of the end of July at just over $10.5 million. And our sales tax collection is running a little behind, but by year end, we'll come close to our budget of $1.2 million. The real highlight this year is our revenues from fines and fees, and that's led by our fees from housing prisoners from Coryell and Lampasas counties in our county jail. This is way ahead of budget at over $450,000 year to date, which is more than the $430,000 we budgeted for the entire year. If you project these figures out to year end, our general fund would gain about $175,000 that could be added to our current reserves of $720,000 that we had at the end of last year going into the first of this year. However, the appraisal district has recently amended their budget by $500,000 to provide for the attorney fees to deal with the Luminant lawsuit regarding their disputed property valuation. The county's portion of that cost is some $163,000, which, when paid, which we did in August, will bring us back to about even in our revenues versus expenses in this year of 2015. However, our $720,000 current reserve balance should remain intact by the end of this year. We'll need that amount to cope with the Luminant situation, as you can see as I explain next year's budget plan. The other thing I want you to see in this picture is that $9.75 million is generally about what we've been spending in the general fund accounts by exercising good cost control measures, and we intend to do that again in 2016, even though the budget is about $1 million more than that each year. The other major part of our budget is the 4 precincts, or the road and bridge accounts as we call them. Our 4 commissioners equally spend up to $3.5 to $3.6 million of the ad valorem tax revenue each year. And all of the license plate fees which we collect, which amounts to about $700,000 each year, that also goes into their budgets. And they have other income from grants and sales of old equipment and so on and so forth that varies from year to year, and so they total about $4.6 to $4.7 million, or about $1.1 to $1.2 million each in revenue, and they control their spending very well, maintaining a healthy level of reserves. Currently we have a total of $2.75 million in road and bridge reserves, with about $1.25 million in precinct 1 and $0.5 million or so in each of the other 3 precincts. Well, that gives you a bit of an update on this year to date. Now let's show you what we have proposed for 2016. If you look at the proposed budget on our website, this is the first page of what you'll see. After September 14th, this page will include our signatures, and the numbers in this budget are based on the appraisal district's valuation of the Luminant property, which is some $470 million or so. Luminant has filed a lawsuit claiming that their property should be valued at about $340 million less than what we have in our plan. You must understand that we had to plan our budget knowing that Luminant is going to pay taxes in January based on their opinion of the value of their property, not on the appraisal district's valuation. This sheet says that this year's taxes will raise some $340,000 more than last year. But the reality is that until the lawsuit is settled, we'll have some $1.75 million less taxes paid in what was paid last year. There are $163,000 in additional property taxes on new properties as stated, and that's good. We're keeping the county tax rate at 65.2 cents, which is the same as last year. Based on the appraisal district's tax base, the effective tax rate is 64.92 cents, and so on. We have $5.29 million in bond debt outstanding, and that's the bonds that are left outstanding on the jail facilities that were built several years ago. These will all be paid off in 2024. This is the second page of the budget proposal. The one point that I would make here is that the total budget for 2016 on both the revenue and the expense side includes all of our reserves, both general fund and the road and bridge reserves. So the 2016 budget is overstated by about $3.5 million. So our actual budget in terms of collections and expenditures for next year is about $15 million rather than the $18.6 million that you see on this page. This chart here tells you the true story for 2016. First of all, as I've said, we're proposing that we leave the county tax rate the same as last year at 65.2 cents. Most of you are probably saying, well, that's no big deal. I'm telling you, it's a big deal. The effective tax rate goes down only because the appraisal district's tax base went up. But remember, we've got a major lawsuit facing us. I should say facing the appraisal district to be technically correct, but believe me, it's facing all of us. If they lose, we lose, and that tax base goes down by $340 million. The budgeted tax revenue base on the appraisal district's $1.7 billion tax base is $10.96 million. Based on what Luminant is going to pay in January, it's $8.75 million. That's a $1.8 million less than we collected this year. That's right, $1.8 million less. If the appraisal district wins the lawsuit, we'll eventually get the full $10.96 million collected. If the appraisal district partially wins, we'll get somewhere in between $8.75 million and $10.96 million. Who knows what it'll be? In the meantime, we had to plan our 2016 budget. The budget that you see on the website includes the total $10.96 million in tax revenue, but we had to plan our expenses based on the expectation that we'll only receive $8.7 million in revenue from taxes, and we don't know if we'll get more than that or not. We're not going to raise the tax rate in order to generate more taxes or more revenue. We're going to leave it where it is, as I've said. So we're going to be doing other things instead of trying to raise our tax rate. We're going to cut the general fund budget, basically. This means we're going to further reduce personnel. We're not going to give any pay increases in 2016, and we're planning to have to spend the $720,000 in general fund reserves that we built up over the past several years. And if the Luminant dispute is not settled favorably by the end of 2016, or if it's settled, maybe not settled at all, we'll have to borrow money to cover any general fund deficits toward the end of 2016. Or we might even have to use some of the road and bridge reserves, which we really don't want to use because those are there for a purpose. This page shows the cuts we're planning to make in the general fund accounts. And what's there is that we're going to reduce one full-time person in the county clerk's office, one in veteran service, one in the district clerk, and tax assessor's departments, and we'll probably reduce one in the health department or move one or more over onto some of the grant funds there. We'll definitely be doing some things differently there. We'll be reducing or eliminating donations to historical preservation, the senior center, Cameron and Rockdale Library. We'll eliminate the Coyote Bounty program. We reduced the expenditures in the information technology department and other departments, resulting in total reductions of over $265,000. We've had to increase expenditures in a couple of areas, one being in elections due to the 2016 being an election year. We also purchased new radio equipment here a few months ago for the sheriff's department, and the first $60,000 installment payment and a 5-year note comes due in 2016. So we've reduced the general fund budget by a net $186,000 or so. And we may very well have to do some additional reducing during the coming year as well. In fact, we definitely will be working at doing further reduction besides the ones that are planned already. Since 2013, we'll have reduced our total full-time county personnel from 168 to at least 154 in 2016, which is over an 8% reduction in our county personnel. If Luminant wins their lawsuit, we'll no doubt have to look for ways to reduce even further, and unfortunately, in addition, we're going to have to raise the tax rate in future years. This is a very busy looking slide here, but it shows the results of a 12 county salary and benefits survey that I do each year of the surrounding counties of similar size to Milam County, that shows that for most county jobs, we're already 10% or so behind the average in pay, except for some of our sheriff's department jobs and jail jobs, where we've done a little better job of keeping up with the smaller counties. This past year, we did actually 2 increases in some of those jobs to keep up. But if you compare it to the larger counties like Bell, Brazos, Williamson, and so on, we're well behind in these sheriff's department jobs, 15 or 20% in most cases. And by now doing any raises, and without doing any raises in 2016, we'll be among the 3 lowest paying counties in this part of the state. But that's because we're headed toward having one of the 2 or 3 lowest tax bases in this area as well. Now let me take a minute just to show you this year's version of the Milam County tax roll. Follow me from top to bottom on this page and down the right-hand side as I explain the numbers. First, let's look at land, which is at the top of the page. The market value of all agricultural land in the county is valued at $1.35 billion. That's up $234 million this past year, as appraised by our appraisal district. However, ag exemptions also went up $234 million overall, so we gained nothing on our tax rolls on ag land. It stayed at $63 million, and that's only 3% of our tax base. There was no change to home sites, which stayed at $52 million, and all the other land that's not ag exempt and so on, or our lots where our houses are on, all the other land went up $13 million to $115 million. So if you add all three of these types of land together, they represent about 10% of our tax roll in the county. Improvements on the land, which are all the different kind of structures, including our houses and everything else, went up this year 22 million to a total of 462 million. I mean, our houses part of it went up 22 million to 492 million, and all of our homes represent about 22%, up 33 million to $370 million, which is about another 18%. So all the land and improvements represent about half of the total assessed value in Milam County. And so the rest of it, the other half, is what we call non-real estate, which is the industrial commercial property and a little of its minerals. Now mineral is what's to me hard to believe, because it dropped by almost half this past year. It dropped by 52 million, leaving only 54 million on the tax rolls, which is barely 2.5% of the total in the county on the tax rolls. The rest is industrial. $1,065 million of our tax base is what's called our industrial commercial property. The aluminum valuation is some 475 million, or almost a half of this industrial total. And Luminant's lawsuit claims this should be reduced by 340 million. So you can see why we're scrambling, why we're so concerned about the Luminant valuation. But laying that aside for a minute and just looking at what currently we've been given as the tax base for Milam County, putting the Luminant challenge aside, the total assessed value for the time being is $2.212 billion. $2.2 billion. And there are currently 489 million exemptions in the county. Probably half of that being environmental exemptions for Luminant. And there are 172 million freeze taxable properties. That's being the homesteads of us over 65 folks and some disabled veterans. So what's left is the freeze adjusted taxable properties of Milam County, which is $1.541 billion. $1.5 billion is our freeze adjusted tax base, and that's up 45 million this year so far, at least until the limited contest of value is settled. So stay tuned to see how it finally comes out. This next overhead shows what's happened to the Luminant property valuations in Milam County over the past 5 years. In 2010, Unit 5 went on the roll at its high, and that was when the Luminant valuation was at its highest, and the total values out there were $722 million. In 2011, that dropped to $632 million, a 13% drop. In 2012, it dropped another 17%, primarily due that year to the fluidized beds being exempt from environmental, because of being classified as environmental equipment. In 2014, last year, the value dropped to $450 million, another 14%, due to Luminant going into bankruptcy and claiming that their value had diminished substantially as a result. This year, they have simply stated that they believe they are worth only, I'd show 110, but it's actually 125 million. I'm not sure, of course, where it'll finally end up as a result of the lawsuit. But they have given no reason or rationale for their claim for this drastic reduction that they're claiming. We do not know how long it'll take for the lawsuit or dispute over the valuation to be resolved. I'm convinced that regardless of the outcome, that Luminant will continue to press the Milam County Appraisal District year after year to reduce their valuation. All you have to do is look at what's happened these past 5 years. It's obvious. And with the environmental issues facing coal-fired plants, they may even be forced to shut down. Therefore, until we see significant growth of our county's tax base, we must continue to reduce our costs, and we're inevitably faced in future years with increasing our tax base. I hate to say that, but that's what we're faced with. And the bad thing is that's going to impede our economic growth if we go up with our tax rate. So this is not a very pleasant thing for me to be saying to you. But regardless of the outcome of the lawsuit, the current cuts that are being undertaken must be carried out, and we're going to have to maintain those cuts into future years. And we've got to work hard to get economic growth into Milam County. Thank you very much.